Welcome to the Lindsay and Tony podcast, where we talk about spirituality, business, and life experiences.
In this podcast, we're bringing our private conversations to you.
We believe that it's through discussion, action, and reflection that true change occurs. Hello and welcome to episode 10. I can't wait for you to experience this episode. I interviewed author Garnet Schulhauser, and I actually have interviewed Garnet before on my radio show, and I love talking to him so much I had to have him on my podcast to talk to him again, and this time about his brand new book. In this episode, we talked all about his books and his journey with his spirit guide, Albert, and those on the spirit side. It was such an interesting conversation. I can't wait for you to listen. Before you listen, I'm going to read a little bit about Garnet. Garnet is a retired lawyer who lives near Victoria on Vancouver Island with his wife, Kathy. After practicing corporate law for over 30 years with 2 blue-chip law firms, he retired in 2008, and his first book, Dancing on a Stamp, was published in 2012. He's also written Dancing Forever with Spirit, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, and Dance of Eternal Rapture. He has been active with book signing tours and speaking engagements, and he's been interviewed on over 130 radio talk shows, broadcasts from studios in the US, Canada, the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Australia. And this is actually show number 135 for him, to be exact. Garnet is a level 2 quantum healing hypnosis technique practitioner, and you can find more about Garnet, his books, booking sessions with him at garnetschulhauser.com. And his websites will actually be in the show notes on my website, lindsaymarino.com/podcast. Enjoy the show.
That's what I wanted to actually talk to you about, is your experience before having your spirit guide Albert come in and show you the astral side of things and show you himself. What was your life like before that?
Well, I was raised as a Roman Catholic, so that was my childhood religion.
Yeah.
I was in a very strict religious family. I was an altar boy, did all the things that good Catholic boys do.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I hit my 20s and 30s, I was already beginning to doubt a lot of the things that the church had taught me. And so I rejected most of them. And then I was in no man's land trying to find a new paradigm to latch onto. So I was really, I knew there had to be something more than just when my body died, that would be it. That was the end of the game. I knew there had to be something more. Didn't know what it was. So that Albert came into my life. So before I met Albert, I was practicing law, a corporate lawyer. I was very straight-laced, uptight, arrogant corporate lawyer who basically had no religion and didn't know, sort of in a spiritual sense, didn't know what to latch onto. So Albert sort of solved that problem, set me on a new course. A year after I met Albert, I retired from the law because it just seemed totally irrelevant. And I was off on this new path that Albert had steered me onto, which I found much more satisfying and fulfilling. And I'm much happier person since I met Albert, obviously.
Yes. Now, I wanted to ask you too, I was curious, how have your daily habits changed since you met Albert? Previously, of course, you had to wake up and go to work as a lawyer, but do you find yourself jamming less things in to your daily life with work? I mean, of course, you have to spread your message, but do you find things have shifted?
Oh, immensely, because I'm a lot less stressed out.
Okay.
And I do take things at an easier pace, and I recognize that I'm not in a race. I should take things as they come and enjoy what I'm doing, because when you're in a rush and always stressed out, you're not really enjoying your life. You're just sort of rushing through it. And that's what I did for all my law career. And so now I have a much happier pace. I'm also happier in the sense that I know where I'm going.
Right.
I know who I am. I don't have any concerns about that. And I know that I'm on a journey here to learn and experience things to help Albert as his messenger, which I'm quite happy to do. I'm also very much less judgmental. I realized from talking to Albert and other people that nobody is in a position to judge anyone else for where they who they are or what they're doing, because you don't know the challenges they've faced so far, or the ones they're going to face, or what they had planned for their lives before they were born. And so it's just it makes no sense to try to judge people. And so that, before I used to, and certainly with homeless people before I met Albert, I would see them on the street and I'd think, why don't you get a job like the rest of us, you bum, and quit living on the street? I was very judgmental, very condescending. Now I don't, because I just realized it's a soul having a journey just like me, and they chose that particular circumstance either to help themselves or to help other people. And so there's a purpose for all of this. And so we need to stop judging people because they have a different color of skin, have a different religion, speak a different language, wear different clothes. I mean, none of that makes any difference. It has nothing to do with the soul deep down inside that they are, just like you are and I am, and we're all going to go back to the same place. And so to be judging people for silly things is totally ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I also have one more thing that's really changed. I have a much different attitude towards animals, because now I realize, from described in my second book, where I had a preview of my life review, where I had an encounter with my a little dog, Oscar, a little miniature Schnauzer, and I found out there when I came home one day and I kind of ignored him rather than saying hi and giving him a pat on the head, that animals have feelings and emotions. And I felt all of those from my little dog in this life review, and it was just really heartbreaking, because I didn't mean to offend the little guy. I was just lost in a cloud, And so now I realize that all animals, dogs, cats, everyone, they all have feelings and emotions, and we need to treat them with dignity and respect. So I have a much different attitude towards animals now.
Wow, that's so interesting. It's funny, when you just brought that up, it made me think of my dog Romeo and my husband. And sometimes I'll say, well, let's just go out to eat. We don't have to bring Romeo. He can rest. And he said, well, he's a soul too. We need to take him, which I agree, he is. Yeah. But he needs to have a fulfilling life too. So we bring him everywhere. And we do feel like we're telepathically communicating with him at times too. Now, this is a question that's come up for my husband and I too, and I'm curious to know what you think. Since you had your experience with tuning into your dog, his name is Oscar?
Yes.
Yes. Do you feel different about eating habits related to animals? Do you feel as though?
I feel like I should become a vegetarian. I'm not. I'm trying, and I try to cut back to some degree, certainly more so than before. It's just that it's very difficult for me, because I was born and raised in a meat and potato family, and it's really hard for me to cut it out. And Albert has chided me on that. He said, when you eat flesh, animal flesh, you're slowing down the raise of your vibrations. You're slowing it down, and so to really move up faster, you have to sort of become a vegetarian. I hear him, and I know what he's saying. I just find it difficult to do so, but I'm sort of on that path. I'm thinking about it.
Yes, it's something that we've been talking about. We were having dinner the other night, and Tony, my husband, said, I'm really not feeling good about eating animals. That's what he keeps on saying. I'm like, please don't talk about it while we're eating. But it's something that we've thought of, and it's interesting because when I do mediumship readings or intuitive readings, I find myself getting drawn to being more grounded. I will eat meat after, because it does pull down my vibration. So I understand what Albert's saying with that, but it is that human self, when we're used to being raised a certain way to eat certain things, it's hard to kind of shift that, I guess. It's
hard to change. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard to change. But I have my one of my sons and his wife are vegetarians, and they get along just fine. And I know that it does work, and you can be very healthy as a vegetarian. I just have to sort of get myself there, but I'm not there yet.
Right. Now, I'm wondering with you, have you experienced any sensitivities to you? I'm sure you've experienced sensitivities to your intuition since this has happened. Is that right? Have you experienced?
Yeah. My intuition is a lot keener than it was before. I'm learning to know that when I get a flash of intuition or a thought in my mind, that it's not just sort of random, it's coming from my guides, and I'm learning to pay attention to it. And before, it would just be sort of like, well, that's just a random thought. Who knows where that came from? I don't pay any attention to it. Now I focus on it. And that's because Albert has said, when you get these flashes of intuition, whispers in your mind, they're really coming from your guides. And you really have to listen to it, try to understand what they're telling you, and then act on it, because that's really important.
That's very good to hear, because I know there's a mix of people listening. Some people are psychic mediums that are listening to this podcast, and other people are just normal everyday people thinking, I want to tune in more, but I don't know if it's my own thought or it's guides. So I was curious to know too, I know you have Albert as a guide. Did you find that there were other guides around you that you became aware of when you had the astral experiences?
I became aware of one other guide. Her name is Alina, and I met her on the spirit side of one of my trips, and she came on board my guide team. Like, as you know, your guides will change over the course of your life depending on your needs and where you're going. And so she came on board after I retired from practicing law. She's a very wise, compassionate soul. Her last incarnation on Earth was as a Native American Indian in Wyoming, and she was killed in a massacre. But she's on my team, and I really enjoy her guidance. She's the only one I've met. Albert says I have others, but he won't tell me who they are yet. Hopefully one day he will.
Yes. I was thinking as I was getting ready this morning and knew that I was going to be talking to you, I thought of the question, do you ever know the day you wake up and you think, oh, tonight when I go to sleep, I'm going to have an experience and I'm going to see Albert in my astral travel? Do you ever feel like when you're about to travel, or is it very random?
It seems random to me, but very planned by Albert. But he never tells me ahead of time. He'll just show up. All of a sudden he's there, and he won't tell me when he's coming back next. And I don't get any feelings, so it's a surprise. But I'm sort of ready for a surprise every night, wondering when he's going to come next.
Right. Do you have any advice? Well, I guess this would sort of lead to my next question. When I was little, I used to have a lot of outer body experiences where I would astral travel. And I find that as I've gotten older, it's not as frequent. And I'm just wondering if he's ever told you, there are ways that you can get in this space, or is it just sort of when your soul needs to do it, you become aware of it? I know we're always traveling though.
Yeah, we're always traveling. Yeah, when your soul needs to, your human mind needs to become aware of it by remembering it to help you on your journey, then you will. And so obviously, you as a younger child, you probably needed it a bit more because you were new to this planet and you needed to have the extra comfort. Now you're sort of more advanced, you're wiser, and you know who you are and where you're going. And so there's not that same need to reassure you about really who you are. That's what I would surprise.
Yeah. And that's a good answer and makes me think about a lot of different things too. Now, I'm curious to know, what was the biggest message? Because I know each book has such a significant meaning to it. What was the huge message in your last book that you feel as though you're supposed to share with the world?
I think that the main message was sort of about how we fit into the scheme of things in the universe and who really is the source. I mean, he's told me all along that the source is sort of is everywhere. We were spun out from the source. That's the rough equivalent of what my religion as a kid would say was God, but it's not quite the same concept. And so one of the things that he explained is that the source created the universe and sort of the one big bang moment. And the source did that in order to experience, what it had created, the place where it lived through many different facets. So the universe expanded. There were stars, there were planets. They created individual aspects of itself, which is like souls like we are. And they all fanned out to sort of explore the universe, and everything that we experience, the source experiences as well. So it gets to experience what it has created to appreciate itself and all of its facets. And so the reason that we were created was to be sort of a means for the source to experience different things in the universe that it created. So that's really our role: go out and evolve, explore the universe, become more aware of what's going on, and then eventually, if we want to, we can merge back into the source to sort of experience the unity of the universe in a sort of the source of all love is right there at the source. And then having done that, we can then spin out again, keeping all of our memories and our personality, and go and explore more. And the universe is constantly splitting and expanding. And so what started off was one universe, then split into, it's like a cell mitosis, split into two, then those ones split again. It's continually splitting, and every universe is slightly different. One of the things that was really eye-opening to me was You know, a lot of people talk about parallel universes.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, well, that's how they're created, is because this universe splits into two. So now you have two parallel universes, then they split, and then you have four. It's been going on for a long time. So he took me to Earth, present day, in a parallel universe, and he wanted to show me just how these things work. And so it was really quite amazing because, and I described this in my fourth book.
Mm-hmm.
He took me first of all to New York, and we touched down on Lower Manhattan, and there were the uh, World Trade Towers still standing. And I said to him, "Now, what year is this?" And he said, "Well, it's the current year. It's like 2016." I said, "How come those trade towers are still standing?" He says, "That's due to a quirk in the history of this planet. And what happened was that way back when Muhammad was walking the earth, he died in a freak accident at a very early age. Therefore, there was no Islam ever created. He didn't start a new religion. Islam did not exist on that planet. There are no Islamic terrorists. There was no civil war in Syria. There was never any crusades because the Holy Land wasn't occupied by infidels, according to the Christians. So none of that happened. And so the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center did not happen. And the Middle East, which is predominantly Muslim now, is mainly Christian in that world, Christian and Jewish, and they get along very fine. And there's no strife, no civil wars, no terrorism.
That's
Really
very interesting.
very amazing difference. And then, and even perhaps more startling difference was that he then took me from Lower Manhattan up into what is now known as Harlem in Manhattan. And he dropped me down on the street, and we're standing there, and the people are sort of walking by. And he said to me, "Do you notice anything different?" And I said, it looked normal to me. And all of a sudden I realized there were no black people walking on the street in Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
I said, how does this happen? He said, well, another quirk in the history of that planet, in that universe, was that before the colonization of America, Europe abolished slavery. So there's never any slave trade from Africa to the Americas. No slaves in America. There was no civil war. Lincoln didn't have to emancipate slaves because there weren't any. And as a result, the population of black people in America was about like 1%. That was just from normal immigration, as opposed to the 13% that we have now. And so obviously, civil rights movement never happened. Martin Luther King was never born in America. And that was how that planet had developed in that universe. Two different little quirks, which at the time you wouldn't even think made any difference. But when you look back on it, compared to our Earth, huge difference.
Yes. So do you feel as though when you're traveling and experiencing all of this, is there a time change? I know what I believe about when we change, when we're going from this realm to the next, in the heavenly realm, or whatever you want to call it, it's very quick. A year here might be a minute there, or time doesn't really exist in that way. But what do you suggest about the spirit realm with timing?
Well, with timing, there really is no linear time in the spirit world, as you mentioned. There's no past or future, it's just one big now. So you're right. So when a lifetime of 80 years for a person on Earth, it's basically the blink of an eye over there. Yeah. And so when a soul is contemplating incarnating on Earth, instead of thinking that, oh boy, I'm going to have to be born and live for 80 years, it's going to be a long drag through everything that happens on planet Earth. From that perspective, they think, oh, it's just a brief adventure. I'll be back here before you can turn around. And so it's a different attitude there. But basically, one of the tough things for us to comprehend, at least for me anyway, is that all of our past lives, present lives, and future lives all happen together. So it's like a simultaneous concurrence or concurrent simultaneous event, and it all happens now, except that we experience our lives sequentially. So that, for example, even though they're all happening at the same time, you believe that a life you had in the 16th century is happening before a life in the 18th century, and that's so that you can move along the scale in an appropriate fashion, learning from your past experience, applying that to your next incarnation. So that's why you learn it and view it sequentially, even though it all happens at once, which is really a difficult concept for humans to understand. We're so used to past and present and future.
Right. And it's funny because years ago, I don't know how many years, it probably shifted in 2007 for me, where I never believed in past lives. And then I thought, well, I'm not going to pick up a book about past lives until I feel drawn to it. And it happened. It unfolded for me, and I started to do some past life regression. And I realized that it was really happening, and it was that feeling of right now. Even though it's considered a past life, it's happening as we speak. And it's very interesting, and it did take me a little bit to understand, but I just know in my heart what's true, and I know that it really is happening. I'm curious to know, what is your thought on what happens when we die?
What happens when we die is our souls leave our physical bodies. In fact, typically they leave a few minutes before your physical body actually dies. And like Albert explained to me, if you die in a car accident, your soul will actually leave your body moments before the impact, so you won't feel anything. You'll just be sort of up there observing what's happening, and it won't be distressing to you because you realize that was just my physical vehicle on Earth, which has now ceased to live. But I'm a soul, and I'm going to carry on. And then typically what happens is that your spirit guides will come, basically take you by the hand, lead you over to the spirit side, where you then are met by a welcoming party, which will be usually your deceased relatives, like parents, grandparents, great grandparents, anybody else that you're close to who has died before you.
Yes.
They'll be there welcoming you with open arms and giving you unconditional love. So that's sort of a great greeting, to get you into the spirit side, back into the swing of things on that side, and to realize that you are eternal, and that there are a lot of people who love you, and there's nothing but unconditional love on the spirit side. So he says it's very pleasant. We should not fear it whatsoever.
Yes, I love that. So do you believe that our past loved ones are still communicating with us from your viewpoint of what's happened to you? And
sure, they do communicate. It's not sort of on the same level as your guides, because your guides are sending you messages all the time, but your loved ones will communicate where it's appropriate. If they feel like you need reassurance that, I'm still alive and well, even though my body died, they will communicate. They will do it through telepathy. If you're listening, you can hear it. Sometimes it's physical things like dropping a white feather in your path, putting on a song on the radio that you knew they loved, things like that. That happens all the time. And so they do try to communicate, and they do watch over us, not sort of 24/7 like our guides do, but they are there just to see what's going on. Particularly if you're in a troublesome time, if you're distressed, they like to come and try to give you whatever reassurance that they can give you, or that you're ready to accept.
yes, I love that you're saying it, because I can speak about it all day and try to tell people that their loved ones are all around, but to hear it from you, people listening, they'll kind of think of it in a new way, in a new light. And I think that's important too. Is there anything else that you feel that we're supposed to know as humans living here? And what can we do to make our lives better and the planet better?
Well, first of all, we have to recognize that we're not all sort of separate entities. Like, we're souls, but we're all connected to each other and to the source. And so then when you realize that then you're going to be less likely to lash out at somebody else for doing something, because you realize, okay, we're all brothers and sisters. We're all connected together. And you really, when you lash out at somebody else, you're really harming yourself as well. And so you have to realize that. Then you have to realize that the key to raising your vibrations and making yourself a better person is to embrace love and compassion and forgiveness, and stifle your negative emotions like fear, anger, hate, and greed. And those negative emotions cause most of the strife and violence and wars and terrorist acts on our planet. So we all need to sort of do that, starting with ourselves, because you can't really love and forgive others until you love and forgive yourself. And then from there, you branch out to other people, your family, your friends, your neighbors, co-workers, and try to spread the message. Try to lead by being a shining beacon of light, and convince others that by following your example, that they should too change their ways and discard the negative emotions and embrace love and compassion. We do that, then all of our vibrations start to rise, and we sort of move up. And eventually, if we can really conquer those goals, we can actually make a physical ascension up to the new earth. And some people have done it. I've met a soul of the spirit side that I described in my last book, where she had had a tragic accident where her husband and 2 children were killed in a car accident. She became very bitter and distressed and depressed and upset. and she eventually was contemplating suicide, but somebody convinced her to go to India to an ashram. There she learned to meditate. And when she finally learned to forgive the drunk driver who killed her family, then she was over that hump. And then one day she just woke up from a meditation in the garden, found herself in a different place. It was the new earth. She actually physically ascended because she had really gotten rid of all of her negative emotions. And so it was really a good example that we can all do that. It's not easy to get rid of your negative emotions, but if you can, and you fully embrace love and compassion, you can actually do it. And there is a new earth in a higher dimension for sure, because I've seen it.
So you actually go, so for this woman, she's still here on earth, or did she already?
No, she made the ascension physically to the new earth, and then when she decided to leave that incarnation, the new earth, she went to the spirit side, and so that's where I talked to her. And when I said to her, in your next incarnation, are you going back to the new earth? She said, I can, but I'd rather go back to the old earth where I can try to help more people make the ascension. And so she decided to sort of go back down to our earth to help others.
Wow. There was another question I was going to ask also when you were speaking, and that was something that so many people want to know, and they want to know, how can they connect in with their guides if they don't know their name and they haven't been aware of any outer body experiences? Are there ways that you have that you feel like you can give them ways to connect in with their spirit guides?
The best way is through meditation, because one of the obstacles to hearing the messages from your guides is that you have so many other thoughts rolling through your head every day. And so you don't hear them, you don't pay attention to them. So by meditating, you try to quiet your mind, get rid of these other thoughts, and then the messages from your guides will start to come in clearer. That's really the only way, and it's not an easy way. Not easy to meditate. Some people can do it quite well. I mean, I do it a bit, but I'm not really good at it yet, because Albert he's made it too easy for me. He's just sort of come into my life, and I didn't have to do it the hard way. But that's really the way for most people, is to just meditate every day, a few times a day, and then just sit there quietly and listen for the messages, and they will come.
Yes. And do you find yourself communicating with Albert when you're not in meditation or you're not leaving your body?
Yeah, sometimes we'll have a brief little conversation. I feel like I shouldn't be bothering him every day, so I just, if I have a question or something profound, then I'll contact him. But I don't have a sort of a continual conversation with him.
Okay. And my last question about that is, what kind of communication does he use? Is it more through your thoughts, or do you hear him very clearly, like a voice, like you and I are speaking, or do you see it like a memory come up in like a daydream when he gives you an answer?
Well, I hear, excuse me, I hear him like you and I are talking, but it's telepathy. It's not a verbal, it's telepathy, but we speak just like you and I are speaking. Yes. So it's a very direct sort of communication. There's no doubt I don't have to sort of try to perceive what he's saying through images or other nonverbal things. He just says it directly to me, which is why he did that, so that I could clearly understand what he's saying, so I could write my books. And so I'm very fortunate for that.
Yeah, and I'm curious to know, how long did your books take to write? Because each book I know would be different, but did you feel as though it was sort of like an automatic writing for every single book, where he was just coming through you?
No, it wasn't really automatic writing. It was, we would have when we had our conversations, I would take notes, and I'd sort of type them out on the computer. And then, so when I was doing my manuscript, I had to sort of basically put it together in some sort of logical fashion. Occasionally, if I forgot something, I would ask him, and he would tell me, but he wasn't really dictating it to me. I wished he had, because it would have been so much easier.
Yes.
But it took, my first book, it probably took a year and a half to do the manuscript, because I had to rewrite it a number of times. I was new at the game. But my second, third, and fourth books, I did from start to finish probably 6 to 8 months. So a lot quicker, because I became better at it.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just so glad that we were able to talk today. And I feel like every single book that you have has a different, has so many different gems inside of each book. And I want people to really check out every single one of them. And I feel like this is just the beginning of all the books that are coming for you too. I'm sure you're going to be getting more information with Albert.
Yes, people have asked me about whether there'll be a fifth book. Albert has said yes, they will be, but he's going to tell me when. So I'm just waiting for my marching orders.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Can you tell everyone where they can go to get more information about you and maybe events that you have coming up, or anything new?
Yeah, best source is my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com. That's hard to remember. So if you Google Dancing on a Stamp or any of my book titles, you can get to my website. There's information on all of my books. There's links to my social media sites like Facebook and LinkedIn and so on. You can download a free excerpt from each of my books. You can watch a book video. And I have the recordings from my YouTube page, recordings of all of my previous radio shows. So you can listen to my recordings. This is show 135 for me, Lindsay.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And they're all there. And my email address is on my website. Be happy to hear comments or questions from your listeners.
I love it. Well, I'm so thankful for all your time and energy. And I'm thankful that Albert gave you this experience where you can pass on these messages that are so important for everyone to hear.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful for Albert as well. And I tell him that every time I see him, and he says, "Yeah, don't worry about it. You can give me a big hug when you cross over to the spirit side for good."
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Garnet.
Thank you, Lindsay, and have a great day.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. If you liked it, leave a 5-star review on iTunes, and remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel too.
If you can think of anyone else that would love this episode, share it with them right now on social media or email. And remember, getting results is a process of learning, applying, and reflecting. Stay consistent and continue to grow every day.